Welcome, my great students. I'm glad to welcome you to our second lesson on learning and communication skills. Today we are looking at types of reading. I am Ukoha or Igwe. Welcome again to our lesson 2. Today we're moving on with our lesson on learning and communication skills. We're taking lesson 2, types of reading. Why do you read? What do you read? What are the various types of reading that you engage in? Your academic journey involves rigorous reading. You will need to undertake different types of reading. Different circumstances require different types of reading. People read for different reasons and engage in different types of reading. As we're going to see in our lesson today, you will see authors have given different types of reading, such as skimming reading, close reading, general reading, and we're going to look at these different types of reading as we journey along. When you read newspapers, magazines, and other ephemeral materials, this is described as skimming reading. That means you skim, you scan through the text. This is different from reading your academic materials for assignments, examinations, term papers, or for preparing proposals. There's also the reading that is described as general reading. That means you read for general understanding. It is also called scanning. It is looking through a text quickly to get a specific piece of information. We do this kind of reading most of the time when we pick a novel to glance through the content of the novel. It is described as general reading. There is also the close reading. Reading, just as the name implies, close reading. Reading for a complete understanding of the material. As a student, you require this kind of reading to be able to make a success in your journey. Look at this photo, for instance, is giving you a description of what close reading is all about. When you read and you mark, you take notes, you highlight, you are going into more detail in trying to understand or search out meaning in what you read. This is described as close reading. There are other types of reading that other authors have classified or categorized. There is the one they called sub-vocalization. This is a painstaking, slow kind of reading. This kind of reading applies to texts that are difficult to read. When you read and you have to do that slowly, carefully, to understand what you read, this is described as sub-vocalization. There are so many materials we read, so many academic texts we read, like when we're studying chemistry. You cannot flip through a book on chemistry just like that. You have to be very slow, painstakingly slow to understand what you read. You have to make a lot of jottings. You have to, take time to make out meaning of what you read. This is described as sub-vocalization. There's also the one they have described as extensive, on the other hand, light reading. It is more like the general reading. It requires little concentration to understand the text. When you read novels and other materials like that to build your confidence or to enjoy yourself, it is described as extensive or light reading. It is described as extensive or light reading. There is also what is called intensive or study reading. When you read and you have to ask the what, the how, the why. When you read to have a deeper understanding, this is deep reading that involves thinking, understanding, and recalling what you have read. This kind of reading requires reflection, thought, analysis, and comparison. In this kind of reading, you try to make your notes, you know, and you try to evaluate what you read. You also try to summarize the essential elements in what you read. In this kind of reading, it is described as intensive or study reading. But the question we really need to ask ourselves, do people really read in Nigeria? There is a general discussion that there is a poor reading habit in Nigeria, in developing countries generally. And I need you to ask yourself, in your environment, in your community, among yourself, do people really, really read? There is a prevalence of poor reading habits. It is generally known or understood that people don't read in African countries, in developing countries. And one of the major reasons attributed for that is that our culture is mainly oral. And they say there's a common saying that if you want to hide anything, put it in books. If you want to hide anything for the African man or the Nigerian man, put it in books. You know, and because people don't read, that item will remain hidden. Our culture, enjoys the communal gathering where people tell stories and tales and all of that. This is one major reason why there is a poor reading habit. There's also poor reading conditions. Even when people want to read, the conditions are not conducive. The environment is not encouraging. We don't have libraries, school libraries, primary school libraries, secondary school libraries, no books, and people are poor. They cannot buy books for themselves. And you just look at it as a student. When last did you buy book for yourself? General books, newspapers, academic texts. People would prefer to use the money for ephemeral things, unimportant things, very light things. And that is also one major reason why there is a poor reading habit in our environment. But I want you to understand, no matter the situation around you, there is need to develop effective reading habits. If you don't have effective reading habits, you are going to go nowhere in your studies. You are not even going to go very far in life. You are not going to make any significant progress in your entire journey. We need to read, and we need to keep reading from the time we are born all through the time that we live on earth and eventually depart. So, as a student, for you to be successful in your academic journey, you need to develop effective reading habits. And that's why this course is very important, that will introduce us to some of the strategies we require to develop and adopt to help us develop effective reading habits that will lead us to great success in our lives. As we progress in this course, I want you to understand that learning and communication skills is very essential for your success and progress in the entire journey of your life. Time to say goodbye. My name is Ukoha Igwe.